There's a house on my street that's been for sale 3 times in the last decade. Beautiful place. Great neighborhood. Good schools nearby. And every single time, it goes to a Jewish family. Not because of some secret network. Not because of preferential treatment. But because when that house hits the market, Jewish buyers already know whether they want it or not. They've done the math. They understand the numbers. And they move fast. Meanwhile, other families spend months debating, getting emotionally attached, overpaying because they fell in love with the kitchen backsplash. Jewish real estate strategy isn't about finding dream homes. It's about finding assets that work. And that difference? That's why one approach builds wealth, and the other just buys houses. Quick request before we go deeper. Drop a comment with what city you're watching this from. I want to see how far this perspective is spreading, and it helps me understand the different real estate markets you're all dealing with. Leave your city below. Let's start with the most fundamental difference. Jewish families don't buy homes. They acquire real estate. Sounds like semantics, but it's actually a completely different mindset. A home is an emotional purchase. Real estate is a financial decision. One is about feelings. The other is about numbers. When my wife and I bought our first property, we looked at maybe 40 places, but we only seriously considered 3. Why? Because 37 of them failed the initial calculation. Before we even scheduled a viewing, we ran the numbers. Purchase price, property taxes, insurance, estimated maintenance, potential rental income if we ever moved, resale projections based on neighborhood trends. If the math didn't work, we didn't waste time looking. Our friends thought we were crazy. They'd fall in love with a house online, go see it, get emotionally invested, then try to make the numbers work. We did the opposite. Numbers first. Emotions never. We bought a property for $240,000, lived there 5 years, sold it for $370,000. Our friends bought their dream home for $300,000, sold it 5 years later for $310,000. Same time frame, different strategy, massively different results. This is the first principle. Real estate is an investment that you happen to live in, not a home that might appreciate someday. That shift in perspective changes every decision you make. Let's talk about location. Everyone knows the phrase, location, location, location. But they interpret it as, buy in the nicest area you can afford. Jewish strategy says something different. Buy in the area that's about to become nice. There's a concept called buying on the edges. You don't buy in the center of the established wealthy neighborhood where prices are already maxed out. You buy on the edges of that neighborhood, where it's still affordable, but clearly moving in that direction. You're not speculating wildly. You're observing patterns and positioning ahead of them. My Uncle Morris did this brilliantly 20 years ago. There was a neighborhood in our city that everyone avoided. Older homes. Not great reputation. But 3 things were happening. Downtown was expanding in that direction. Young professionals were priced out of nearby areas, and the city had just approved a major infrastructure project 2 blocks away. Morris bought 4 properties in that neighborhood over 3 years. Everyone thought he was insane. Today, those properties are worth 8 times what he paid. He retired at 55. He didn't get lucky. He observed, he calculated, he positioned. That's not gambling. That's strategy. Here's something most people never consider: the community premium. Not just good schools or low crime, though those matter. The actual community. Where there's established community infrastructure, there's usually strong schools, active involvement, local businesses, safety consciousness, property maintenance standards. These factors drive property values up consistently over time. Let's address the numbers more directly. There's a calculation that guides almost every decision. The purchase price should never exceed 3 times your annual household income. Not what the bank will lend you. Not what you're pre-approved for. 3 times income, maximum. Why? Because this ratio ensures you can handle the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance without becoming house poor. It leaves room for investing, for emergencies, for living. Most financial advisors suggest you can afford a house up to 5 times your income. Banks will lend you even more. But Jewish financial wisdom says, just because you can borrow it doesn't mean you can afford it. I know a couple, Victor and Diana. Combined income of $100,000 a year. The bank approved them for a $500,000 mortgage. They bought a house for $280,000 instead. Their friends bought at $450,000 on similar incomes. 5 years later, Victor and Diana had invested the difference in their monthly payments. They'd built an investment portfolio worth over $100,000. Their friends were struggling with their mortgage, couldn't afford vacations, and had zero savings. Here's another critical factor. Jewish buyers almost always factor in rental potential. Even if you never plan to rent it out, you ask, could this property generate rental income if needed? What would it rent for? Does that number make sense relative to the purchase price? This is called the 1% rule. Monthly rent should be at least 1% of the purchase price. Buy a $300,000 property. It should rent for at least $3,000 a month. If it can't, the property is overpriced relative to its income potential. My neighbor Karen bought a beautiful condo in a luxury building. Paid $400,000. Looks amazing, but it would only rent for about $1,800 a month. Fails the 1% rule completely. 2 years later, she needed to relocate for work. Couldn't sell it for what she paid. Couldn't rent it for enough to cover the mortgage. She's stuck. Compare that to my cousin's approach. He bought a less impressive property for $250,000 that rents for $2,800 a month. Exceeds the 1% rule. He's since bought 3 more properties with similar numbers. He's 34, and his rental income covers all his living expenses. Let's talk about timing. The common advice is, buy when you're ready. Jewish approach says, buy when the math makes sense, regardless of whether you feel ready. This means buying during market downturns when everyone else is scared. It means acting quickly when you find a property that hits your numbers. During the 2008 financial crisis, most people stopped buying real estate. Prices were falling. Fear was everywhere. Jewish investors, they were buying. Not recklessly, carefully. Properties that made sense at the new prices. My father-in-law bought 2 investment properties in 2009. Everyone thought he was crazy. Those properties have tripled in value. He generates $4,500 a month in rental income from them. Conversely, Jewish strategy also says, don't buy during feeding frenzies. When everyone is desperate to buy, when bidding wars are normal, when prices are clearly inflated, you wait. You rent. You stay patient. From 2020 to 2022, housing prices exploded. People were buying sight unseen, waiving inspections, offering $50,000 over asking price. Jewish buyers largely sat out. They rented. They waited. Now prices are stabilizing, and they're shopping again. Here's something subtle but powerful. Jewish real estate decisions factor in generational thinking. You're not just buying for yourself. You're buying with an eye toward what you might pass down. Does this property have long-term durability? Will it still be desirable in 20 years? Could your kids benefit from it someday? This means avoiding trendy areas that might fade. It means preferring classic architecture over modern fads. It means choosing neighborhoods with strong fundamentals, not just current hype. I have family friends who own a property they bought in 1987. Paid $120,000. It's now worth over $1 million. But here's the thing. They never sold it. When they moved, they rented it out. Now their daughter lives there, paying below market rent, building her own savings. Eventually, she'll inherit it debt-free. That's generational wealth creation through real estate. Let's address leverage. Jewish financial teaching is generally debt-averse, but real estate is the exception. Mortgages are considered acceptable debt because they're secured by an appreciating asset. The key is, use leverage strategically, not maximally. Don't borrow the absolute maximum you're allowed. Borrow conservatively on properties that make economic sense. So here's what Jewish real estate strategy actually looks like. You treat real estate as investment first, emotion second. You buy in emerging areas, not peak areas. You follow the 3 times income rule. You apply the 1% rental test. You buy during fear, not frenzy. You think generationally. You use leverage carefully. You run the numbers before you schedule the viewing. This approach doesn't get you the biggest house. It doesn't get you the trendiest address, but it builds real wealth. Consistent, sustainable, generational wealth. And decades later, you own multiple properties, generate passive income, and have assets to pass down. Tell me in the comments which principle surprised you most about this approach to real estate investing. Hit that like button because understanding real estate as an investment changes everything. Subscribe right now, because the next video breaks down the exact formula for calculating whether any property is actually worth buying, and you need those numbers.